What's with that expression, Elaine? You look like you've seen a ghost, he sneered, his voice dripping with sarcasm. I took a deep breath, feeling my heart pounding in my chest. Derek, I can't do this anymore. Your constant belittling, your complete disregard for my feelings, it's suffocating me. Derek laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the walls. Oh, please. You're being dramatic. You knew what you were getting into when you married me. A woman of your limited capabilities should be grateful. Grateful? The word echoed in my mind, mocking me. I thought back to the days when we first met. I was 27 then, full of ambition and dreams, working diligently in the marketing department of a bustling firm. Derek, with his charming smile and seemingly kind demeanor, had swept me off my feet. We met at a company event, and he was all I had ever wanted, or so I thought. But now, standing in our meticulously kept living room, I barely recognized the man before me. The kind and attentive Derek I had fallen in love with was gone, replaced by this cold, calculating person who seemed to take pleasure in my misery. You think I should be grateful? I challenged, my voice steadier than I felt. Grateful for a husband who sees his wife as nothing more than a maid? Who values his ego over our relationship? Derek's face darkened. You know your place, Elaine. You gave up your job to be my wife, to take care of me in this house. That was your decision. Yes, it was my decision, I shot back, feeling a surge of anger. A decision I made because I believed in us, in our partnership. But this is not a partnership, it's tyranny. He scoffed. Dramatic as always. You should know by now, Elaine, I'm the one who makes the decisions here. If you can't handle the simple tasks of a housewife, maybe you should reconsider your position in this marriage. Reconsider my position? The words hit me like a physical blow. All the years of putting his needs before mine, of enduring his criticisms and dismissals, of trying to be the perfect wife he demanded, it all came crashing down in that moment. I straightened, meeting his gaze head-on. No, Derek, it's you who should reconsider. I'm not your property, and I refuse to be treated as such any longer. I deserve respect, and if you can't give me that, then maybe this marriage was a mistake. The room fell silent, the weight of my words hanging in the air between us. Derek's face was a mask of shock and anger, his eyes burning into mine. So that's how it is? He said finally, his voice low and dangerous. You think you can just walk away? You think you can survive without me? I took a step back, feeling a flicker of fear, but I pushed it down. I don't just think it, Derek. I know it. I'm not the scared, timid woman you think I am. I'm stronger than you know, and I won't be broken by your cruelty. For a moment, Derek looked as if he might say more, but then he turned on his heel and stormed out of the room, leaving me alone with my racing thoughts and a newfound determination. I knew this was just the beginning, that the road ahead would be difficult. But for the first time in a long time, I felt a spark of hope. I would find my way out of this. I would rediscover the woman I used to be, the woman I was meant to be. And Derek would come to regret ever underestimating me. The days following our confrontation were a blur of icy silences and veiled insults. Derek's contempt for me had become more apparent, his mask of charm and affection long since discarded. One evening, as I prepared dinner in our pristine kitchen, Derek sauntered in, his eyes scanning the spread with an air of disdain. Is this what you call a meal? It looks as unappetizing as it probably tastes. I clenched my fists, feeling a familiar surge of frustration. I've done my best, Derek. It's not easy managing everything around here on my own. He snorted, picking at the food with a fork. Your best? That's laughable. You really are useless, aren't you? I work all day to provide for us, and this is the thanks I get? A mediocre dinner from a mediocre wife. His words stung, but I refused to let him see my pain. I'm not your servant, Derek. I'm your wife. I deserve some respect, some appreciation. Derek looked up, his eyes cold. Respect? For what? Keeping the house barely presentable? Even that seems to be beyond your capabilities. And don't even get me started on your lack of skills in the kitchen. I felt a lump form in my throat, but I swallowed it down. I don't know why I bother trying. Nothing I do is ever good enough for you. You bother because it's your duty, he replied sharply. And you're right, it's never good enough. Maybe I made a mistake marrying someone so clearly out of her depth. His words echoed in my mind long after he left the room. I looked around at the house I had meticulously maintained, the meals I had painstakingly prepared, all for a man who couldn't care less. A sense of hopelessness washed over me, but beneath it there was a growing ember of anger, a burning need to prove him wrong. Later that week, I found myself confiding in Mara, my closest friend and confidant. Over coffee, I poured out my heart, the words spilling out in a torrent of frustration and despair. He doesn't see me, Mara. He doesn't see the effort, the love I put into everything. It's like I'm invisible, I said, my voice breaking. Mara reached across the table, her hand warm on mine. Elaine, you're so much more than he makes you out to be. You're strong, talented, capable. You don't need his validation to know your worth. Her words were a balm to my wounded soul, and in that moment something shifted within me. I realized that I had been seeking approval from a man who was incapable of giving it. I had been diminishing myself, trying to fit into the mold of the perfect wife he demanded, at the expense of my own identity. From that day on, I began to reclaim pieces of myself that I had lost along the way. I started secretly working on my graphic design skills, a passion I had abandoned for the sake of my marriage. With each design I created, I felt a sense of empowerment, a reminder of who I was before Derek tried to define me. And as I grew stronger, Derek's attempts to belittle me became less effective. His words still hurt, but they no longer had the power to break me. I was building a foundation for a new life, one where I was the architect of my own destiny. The atmosphere in our home had become a battlefield of unspoken words and simmering resentments. Derek's disdainful remarks had escalated, each one aimed to diminish and control me. But something within me had changed. The once cowering woman was slowly giving way to someone stronger, more defiant. One evening, as Derek arrived home, his usual air of self-importance was more pronounced. He dropped his briefcase by the door and surveyed the living room with a critical eye. "This place is a mess. What have you been doing all day?" I stood up, feeling a surge of defiance. "I've been working, Derek, on my graphic design projects." He laughed, a sound that sent shivers down my spine. "Working? You call that a job? It's a hobby at best, Elaine. Don't flatter yourself." His words were meant to wound, but I stood my ground. "It's more than a hobby. I'm building something for myself, something that doesn't revolve around pleasing you." Derek's expression darkened. "You're getting bold, aren't you? Remember your place, Elaine. You're my wife. That's your primary role." I met his gaze, my voice steady. "My place is not just as your wife. I am my own person, with my own dreams and aspirations." He moved closer, his presence dominating the space. "You have no dreams outside of this house. I provide for you. I give you everything you need. You should be grateful." Grateful. That word again. It echoed in my mind, mocking me. Grateful? For being treated like a possession? For having my aspirations and efforts constantly belittled? No, Derek. I'm not grateful. I'm suffocated. For a moment he seemed taken aback, his facade slipping, but he quickly regained his composure, his voice laced with venom. "You're nothing without me, Elaine. You think you can survive on your own? You'll come crawling back, begging for my forgiveness." His words were meant to break me, but they only fueled my resolve. "I won't be crawling back to you, Derek. I'm stronger than you think." As the days passed, my secret work on graphic design projects became my sanctuary. Each piece I created was a testament to my creativity and resilience. My conversations with Mara became more frequent, her words of encouragement, a lifeline in the storm that was my marriage. I knew that leaving Derek would not be easy. He had woven a web of control and dependence that I had unwittingly stepped into. But with each passing day, the web was loosening, the hold he had on me weakening. I began to plan my escape, each step calculated and deliberate. I opened a separate bank account, securing my earnings from my freelance work. I reached out to a lawyer, discreetly inquiring about the divorce process. But most importantly, I began to rebuild the self-esteem that Derek had so systematically tried to destroy. I looked in the mirror and saw not a broken woman, but someone who was slowly piecing herself back together, someone who was ready to fight for her freedom. And as I lay in bed each night, listening to Derek's steady breathing, I knew that the time for whispers of rebellion was coming to an end. Soon it would be time for bold action, for reclaiming the life that was rightfully mine. The morning sun cast a warm glow through the curtains, but the atmosphere in our house remained cold and unyielding. Derek's contempt had become a daily ordeal, but my resolve had only strengthened. As I sat at the kitchen table, working on a graphic design project, Derek entered, his expression one of derision. "Still playing at your little hobby, I see. When will you realize it's pointless?" I didn't look up from my screen. "It's not pointless, Derek. It's my career, and it's thriving, unlike your opinion of it." He scoffed, pouring himself a cup of coffee. "A career? Don't make me laugh. You're a housewife, Elaine, nothing more. Your place is here, taking care of me, not indulging in these childish fantasies." I felt a flash of anger but kept my composure. My place is wherever I choose it to be, and right now it's here, building a future for myself. Derek slammed his cup down, coffee splashing over the rim. "You have no future outside of this house, Elaine. I won't allow it." His attempt to intimidate me was evident, but I no longer felt the fear that once gripped me. "You don't get to decide my future, Derek. I'm not your property. I'm a person with my own dreams and ambitions." He leaned in, his face inches from mine, his voice a menacing whisper. "You'll never succeed. You're weak, dependent on me for everything. You'll come crawling back, mark my words." I stood up, meeting his gaze. "I won't be crawling back to anyone, Derek. I'm stronger than you'll ever know." The days that followed were a tumultuous mix of silent treatments and bitter arguments. Derek's attempts to belittle me became more desperate, his words more cutting, but with each barb my determination only grew. My work as a graphic designer was gaining traction, my designs being noticed by larger clients. I was building a portfolio that spoke of talent and creativity, a far cry from the hobby Derek so scornfully dismissed. Mara, ever my pillar of support, was a constant source of encouragement. "You're doing amazing, Elaine," she would say. "You're proving him wrong every single day." And she was right. With each project I completed, each client I impressed, I was rewriting the narrative Derek had tried to impose on me. I was no longer the voiceless shadow in his life. I was becoming a force in my own right. The turning point came one evening, as Derek returned from work. He found me in the living room, my laptop open, displaying a particularly intricate design I had just completed. He glanced at the screen, a sneer forming on his lips. "What's this? Another one of your little projects?" I looked up, a sense of pride swelling within me. "Yes, it's my latest project, and it's not little. It's for a major client, one who recognizes my talent." Derek's sneer faltered, his eyes betraying a flicker of surprise. "A major client? I don't believe you." I stood, closing my laptop with a satisfying snap. "Believe it or not, Derek, it's true. I'm succeeding, despite your constant attempts to undermine me. I'm building a life for myself, a life where I don't need your approval or your support." For a moment, there was silence, the tension between us palpable. Then Derek turned and walked away, his usual retorts unspoken. It was a small victory, but a significant one. I knew that the battle was far from over, but for the first time I felt a real sense of hope. I was taking back control of my life, one step at a time, and with each step I was moving closer to freedom, to a future where I was the master of my own destiny. The day had arrived when the facade of our marriage could no longer be upheld. The air was thick with anticipation, a prelude to the storm that was about to erupt. Derek came home to find me packing my belongings, my graphic design equipment neatly stored in boxes. His face registered shock, then anger. "What the hell do you think you're doing, Elaine?" I continued packing, my hands steady. "I'm leaving, Derek. I can't stay in this toxic environment any longer. I'm suffocating." He laughed, a hollow sound devoid of humor. "Leaving? To go where? You think you can survive out there without me? You're delusional." I zipped up the last bag, turning to face him. "I'm not delusional, Derek. I'm awake. I've realized that I don't need you to survive. In fact, I'm better off without you." His face contorted in rage. "You'll come back. You'll see how hard it is, and you'll come crawling back to me." I shook my head, a sense of liberation washing over me. "I won't be coming back. My work as a graphic designer is taking off. I have clients, projects, a career. I'm not the helpless woman you think I am." Derek stepped closer, trying to intimidate me. "You think you're something special because you've got a few clients? You're nothing, Elaine. You'll always be nothing without me." I stood my ground, my voice firm. "I'm not nothing, Derek. I'm more than you ever gave me credit for, and I'm going to prove it." He reached out, attempting to grab my arm, but I stepped back. "Don't touch me, Derek. It's over. I'm leaving, and there's nothing you can do to stop me." For a moment, he looked like he might lash out, but then he composed himself, his voice dripping with disdain. Fine, leave. See if I care. You'll be begging to come back before you know it. I picked up my bags, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. I won't be begging for anything. Goodbye, Derek. As I walked out the door, I didn't look back. The weight of the years of belittlement and control seemed to fall away with each step I took. I was embarking on a new journey, one where I was in control of my destiny. I knew the road ahead would be challenging, but I was ready to face the world on my own terms, ready to show Derek and anyone else who doubted me that I was capable, strong, and independent. And as I drove away from the house that had been my prison, I felt a surge of empowerment. I was no longer Elaine, Derek's wife. I was Elaine, the graphic designer, the artist, the survivor. In the weeks following my departure, I found both solace and challenge in my newfound independence. My career as a graphic designer flourished, each project a stepping stone towards greater achievements. Meanwhile, Derek's world was unraveling, his true nature exposed for all to see. One afternoon, Mara called me with unexpected news. Elaine, have you heard about Derek? I hesitated, unsure if I wanted to know. No, what happened? He's been fired, Mara said, her voice tinged with disbelief. Apparently, his performance had been declining for months, and after you left, it just got worse. He's lost his job. I felt a mix of shock and vindication. Derek, who had always prided himself on his career, now faced the consequences of his arrogance. I can't say I'm surprised, I replied. He was so focused on controlling me that he let his own life fall apart. But that's not all, Mara continued. He's been trying to reach out to you. He's called me a few times, asking if I knew where you were. I felt a chill run down my spine. Derek's persistence was unsettling, but I was determined not to let it shake me. I've moved on, Mara. He's a part of my past now. In the following days, Derek's attempts to contact me became more desperate. He left voicemails, sent emails, each one oscillating between pleas for reconciliation and angry accusations. But I stood firm, ignoring his attempts to drag me back into his toxic orbit. As my career took off, I was invited to showcase my work at a prominent design exhibition. It was a moment of triumph, a testament to my hard work and talent. I stood among my peers, my designs displayed for all to see, feeling a sense of accomplishment that I had never experienced with Derek. The exhibition was also where karma made its grand appearance. Derek, looking disheveled and defeated, showed up unannounced. He approached me, his eyes searching for some semblance of the control he once had. Elaine, he started, his voice unsteady. I need you. I've lost everything. Please, take me back. I looked at him, seeing the man I once thought I loved, now just a shadow of his former self. Derek, you haven't lost everything. You threw it away. You chose your ego over our marriage, your pride over our happiness. He reached out, but I stepped back. Please, Elaine, I'll change. I'll do anything. I shook my head. It's too late, Derek. I've moved on. I've found success and happiness, things I could never have with you. As I walked away, leaving Derek standing alone amidst the crowd, I realized that this was my final goodbye. The chapter of my life that included Derek was now firmly closed. In the months that followed, I heard snippets of Derek's continuing downfall. He struggled to find work, his reputation tarnished by his own actions. The man who once held himself so high had fallen, a victim of his own making. Meanwhile, my career soared. My designs were featured in magazines, my client list grew, and I found joy in my work that I had never known before. I had turned my life around, not just surviving, but thriving. As I sat in my new studio, surrounded by my artwork and the accolades of my hard-earned success, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought me here. The sun streamed through the large windows, casting a warm glow over the room, mirroring the lightness I felt in my heart. Mara visited me that afternoon, her face bright with a smile as she looked around. Elaine, you've done it. You're truly an inspiration. I smiled back, a sense of contentment washing over me. It's been a journey, Mara, but every step was worth it. We sat down with cups of coffee, the aroma blending with the scent of fresh paint and paper. Do you ever think about Derek? Mara asked cautiously. I paused, the memories surfacing briefly. I do, sometimes, but not with anger or regret. He was a part of my path, a difficult chapter that led me to where I am now. Mara nodded, understanding in her eyes. And now you're free, living the life you were meant to. Yes, I agreed, gazing out the window. Free to create, to live, to be me. Derek's hold on me, his attempts to diminish me, they're just echoes of the past now. The conversation shifted to my upcoming projects, the excitement of new challenges and opportunities. But as Mara spoke, I found my thoughts drifting back to the person I was when I was with Derek. That Elaine was like a distant shadow, a reminder of how far I had come. After Mara left, I took a moment to savor the quiet of my studio. The struggles, the pain, the liberation, they had all woven together to create the tapestry of my life. And in that tapestry, the dark threads served only to make the bright colors shine even brighter. I realized then that my story was not just about escaping Derek's shadow. It was about discovering my own light, the strength, resilience, and talent that had always been within me, waiting to be acknowledged and embraced. As the day gave way to evening, I looked at the designs lining the walls of my studio. Each one was a piece of me, a part of my journey. I had not only survived, I had thrived. And in thriving, I had found a peace that was more profound than any revenge. The chapter of my life with Derek had ended, but my story was just beginning. A story of triumph, of finding joy in the midst of sorrow, of rising from the ashes to create something beautiful. As the last rays of the sun faded, I turned off the lights in my studio and stepped out into the cool evening air. The world lay before me, vast and full of possibilities. And I, Elaine, once a shadow, now a source of light, was ready to embrace whatever came next.